So Justice League came out recently, and of course being a comic book movie, it's packed to the brim with Easter eggs, references to a whole bunch of different stuff, including the comics and the movies both in and out of continuity in the DC Extended Universe, and spoilers for future movies. So let's break it down and see what we can find. Although before I do, I just want to point out there are going to be a lot of spoilers here, so just watch out for that if you haven't seen Justice League yet and you don't want to know anything about it. So of course, being set months after Batman v Superman, it makes sense that the world would still be mourning the loss of Superman after he died fighting Doomsday, with the beginning of the movie showing a few shots of different countries around the world displaying banners honoring his memory, all of them black with a silver S logo. If you know your comics history, then you should notice that these banners are extremely reminiscent of Superman's black suit, something he wore after his resurrection during the reign of the Superman story arc in the comics, something I'll talk about again in a little bit. We also see a newspaper headline comparing Superman's death to recently deceased real-life celebrities David Bowie and Prince, with the newspaper questioning whether or not they actually died and wondering if they all faked their deaths and just went back to their home planets. Anyways, moving on, we also get a Stephen King reference by the Flash when the Justice League start discussing the risks involved with bringing Superman back to life, with Flash wondering if Superman would go pet Semetary on them, a reference to how revived characters in the Stephen King novel of the same name would sometimes go berserk and attack former friends and family. When they actually get a move on and they start trying to revive Superman, we get a cameo from his adoptive father, Jonathan Kent, in the photo buried with him during the funeral in Batman v Superman. Going back to the black suit, I know a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit disappointed that it didn't actually show up on screen, but apparently Zack Snyder was actually going to include it in his version of the movie. We all remember how Henry Cavill teased the black suit on Instagram a while back, I'm sure, but not many people seem to remember that Zack Snyder confirmed that Superman would have longer hair, a throwback to that sick-ass mullet Superman was sporting after he came back to life in the comics. I guess after Joss Whedon came on board, he reshot the resurrection scene, taking out the longer hair and the black suit in the process. Thanks a lot, Joss. Anyways, while fighting with the Justice League, Superman says to Batman, "Tell me, do you bleed?" A throwback to Batman asking the exact same thing in Batman v Superman.
Tell me, do you bleed?
Just before he starts fighting Steppenwolf towards the end of the movie, Superman mentions how he's a big supporter of both truth and justice, a reference to his classic catchphrase from the comics. The fight with Steppenwolf is also the first time we've seen Superman use his freeze breath in the DCEU, and at the very end of the movie, we also get to see Henry Cavill do that classic shirt pull thing that Superman's always doing to reveal his costume under his street clothes. Switching over to Batman, we get a couple references to some of his classic villains throughout the movie. Like during Batman's initial fight with one of the parademons, we can see a neon Janus, whatever, sign on one of the buildings. Now it could be a reference to a couple different things in the DC universe, but considering this is Gotham, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a reference to the cosmetic company, a company linked to Roman Sionis, aka the Black Mask. And of course everybody remembers the line in the trailers from Alfred about how Batman used to deal with, quote, exploding wind-up penguins.
One misses the days when one's biggest concerns were exploding wind-up penguins.
A reference to classic Batman villain the Penguin. We also see him referencing a couple different comic book covers throughout the movie in the different poses and moves he performs, including the cover of Detective Comics number 27 when he's fighting parademons towards the end of the movie, and Detective Comics number 682 when we see him perching on top of a statue. There's probably some similar moments with the other members of the Justice League, but I personally didn't notice them. We also get a couple references to some older Batman media, like during the scene when Barry Allen goes to visit his dad in prison, the officer who checks him in, played by 1970s Jimmy Olsen actor Mark McClure by the way, dials a number on his smartphone to notify Batman, with the icon representing Batman being the classic red bat phone from the 60s Batman TV show. Skipping forward a little bit in the movie, you might have also heard a brief snippet of Danny Elfman's classic 1989 Batman theme song in the scene when the Justice League meet with Commissioner Gordon to talk about the people the parademons kidnapped. Speaking of musical cues, we also get to hear the classic 1970s Superman theme song during Superman's resurrection. And while we don't get to hear the classic TV Wonder Woman theme, we do get the electric violin version as heard in both Batman v Superman and Wonder Woman during the scene when Wonder Woman saves a whole bunch of hostages. Speaking of, let's talk Wonder Woman Easter eggs and references. During a fight with the Justice League, Steppenwolf mentions how Wonder Woman has the blood of the old gods in her, a reference to the revelation that we got at the end of her solo movie about how Zeus is really her father as opposed to being formed from clay like her mother used to tell her.
Only a god can kill another god. Zeus left the child he had with the Queen of the Amazons as a weapon to use against me.
As far as the Greek gods go, we actually get to see some of them in action when Wonder Woman goes through the origins of the mother boxes on Earth. We see cameos from some of them like Zeus, Artemis, and Ares, who later kills all the gods, so obviously this scene happens before that. And there's also an unnamed Green Lantern helping out the forces of Earth. The Green Lantern we see in this scene isn't really supposed to be anybody we know, but at least this brief appearance helps reconfirm the presence of the Green Lantern Corps in the DCEU. We also get a throwback throwback to the Wonder Woman solo movie when Batman mentions that Steve Trevor was the reason Wonder Woman shut herself off from the rest of the world, a reference to the character's death at the end of that movie. To be fair to Wonder Woman though, it's not exactly like Batman does any better, apparently cutting himself off from everybody after the murder of Jason Todd. Hell, Commissioner Gordon himself even mentions that it's nice seeing Batman working with other people again.
It's good to see you playing well with others again.
Speaking of, there is a moment in the GCPD when Gordon talks to somebody about the parademons, and even though the guy isn't named during the scene, the credits reveal that the guy's name is Crispus Allen, a character who, in the comics, is killed and later becomes the Spectre. There's not a whole lot of Aquaman references in this movie, but there are a few interesting ones. Like, during the Steppenwolf invasion flashback, we see King Atlan in full battle armor leading the armies of Atlantis against the forces of Apocalypse. This same armor is later picked up for Aquaman by Mira, who name drops his mother, Queen Atlanta, when the two start arguing about how she, Queen Atlanta, left him on his father's doorstep when he was born. We also see Bruce making fun of how Aquaman can talk to fish.
I hear you can talk to fish.
Something repeatedly made fun of by pretty much everybody in every single media ever. Then there's the Flash. When he first meets with Bruce, Barry mentions that he knows sign language, specifying that he knows Gorilla Sign Language, a reference to his enemy in the comics, Gorilla Grodd. There's also an episode of Rick and Morty, Something Ricked This Way Comes, playing on a monitor behind Bruce. While leaving with Bruce, Barry also name drops the Speed Force as the source of his power, something that actually does power speedsters throughout the DC multiverse. He also mentions having to eat a lot of food because running as fast as he does burns up a lot of energy. This trait was originally associated with the Wally West version of the Flash in the comics, although it was later carried over to Barry in the 1990 Flash TV show, as well as the current version with Grant Gustin. We also technically get a reverse Flash reference in the whole Henry Allen's locked up for murdering his wife Nora setup in this movie. If you've read the Flash Rebirth comics or seen the current Flash TV show, then you should remember that Barry's mom was actually killed by Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash. Barry also name drops the Batcave at one point when he and the other Justice League members enter Bruce's crime-fighting lair. We also get a handful of Cyborg Easter eggs and references, like when the character gets to say his classic catchphrase "Booyah" after the team saves the world. And at the very end of the movie, we see Cyborg's body upgrading itself, becoming a bit more like the version we've seen in the comics. There's also a scene when Steppenwolf mentions how, after he's managed to transform Earth using the Mother Boxes, he'll be taking his rightful place among the New Gods, a group of beings in the comics who live on the planets New Genesis and Apocalypse, and were created by comic book legend Jack Kirby. Steppenwolf also directly name drops Apocalypse when he mentions Darkseid by name, calling him the ruler of the planet. And we also see multiple times throughout the movie that Steppenwolf uses boom tubes to travel around Earth, a classic transportation method in the comics. There's also a couple more Easter eggs and references in the movie's mid and post-credit scenes. I already did a full breakdown of both of them, links in the description, but to kind of sum them both up, the mid-credit scene features Superman and the Flash getting ready to race each other, a reference to both a couple moments in the movie as well as the Superman-Flash races in the comics, and the post-credit scene features both Lex Luthor and Deathstroke hinting at the beginnings of the Injustice League when Lex mentions that they need, quote, a league of our own. And that's pretty much it. That's all the Easter eggs and references I could find in Justice League. If you guys noticed any that I didn't talk about here, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button, maybe leave me a comment while you're at it, and go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to check out any of my social media pages. I've got a Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. All those links are going to be in the description below. And I've also got my last video right there in the middle of your screen, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and click it, check it out. Alright, and I will see you all next time.